So the last time we spoke, I mentioned that I'd be playing 2550 on a live stream, and well, today is the day. Here we are at Hustler Casino, probably the only place to find a 2550 on a Monday, at least a public place, I should say. Plenty of home games here in the LA area, but that's not really my scene. And plus, what's not to like about playing on YouTube in front of all you folk to pick apart my hands and tell me how terrible I play? Jokes aside, today's a big day because it's going to be a tougher lineup than normal, at least compared to the other live streams they've had here. And secondly, I'm going to buy in for $50,000, which is quite a bit, at least for me. So that's two things that I'm not super used to, but I'm happy to face the challenge and see what happens. Anyway, I think that's all I got for now. It's time to head inside and play some cards. Let's go. Okay guys, here we are playing some 2550 no limit with an extra $50 ante from the big blind every hand. There's no max buy-in for this game, so as mentioned, I chose to sit with $50,000. In the first interesting hand of the night, action folds around to me on the button and I look down at pocket twos. The straddle is on, so I raise to 300 and then the small blind makes it 1500. It gets back to me, and with a pocket pair, I'm not going anywhere just yet. Heads up to a flop of queen, queen 3. The small blind continues with a small bet, and I make the call. The turn is a 4, and now he bets $2,000. Well, we could certainly be losing to a queen or a bigger pocket pair, but we're also beating hands like ace-king or any other Broadway cards that didn't connect. So I make the call once again and find a terrible river, the 4 of diamonds, counterfeiting my hand. However, the small blind decides to finally check, and now we have an opportunity to win the pot. If I had anything strong on this board, like a full house or big pocket pair, I would obviously bet, so I think doing the same thing when I have nothing is a reasonable play. Let's see what happens.
Crazy thing. Mariano's trying to rep a hand like pocket eights. Telling a pretty good story here. He had deuces. He could have eights.
After a few painful minutes for myself, my opponent finally decides to fold. Nice. In the next hand, there's an open to 300. Two players call from the blinds, and I'm in the straddle with Jack-8 offsuit. Folding seems best, but given that I have position against two of the players and I'm getting a good price, I make an optimistic call. 4 of us going to a flop of queen 10 deuce with a flush draw. Not much going on for me, until action checks around and we see a 9 on the turn, giving me a straight. It does bring in a possible flush, but once it checks to me again, it seems unlikely anyone has one, so I bet $1,000. Only the small blind makes the call, and we go heads up to a blank on the river, the 4 of spades. She checks it again, and this time I place a value bet of $3,500. My opponent doesn't seem too happy with it, but after some time, she does decide on a call. As you can see, she didn't have much with just a pair of 9s, but I don't blame her curiosity since her having the king of hearts makes it less likely I have a straight or a flush. Luckily, I wasn't bluffing this time, and we take down a decent sized pot. Things are going well so far. Let's see if we can keep it going with pocket jacks. The straddle is on once again, so we're pretty much playing 25, 50, 100 at this point. Anyway, there's a limp from early position, and I make it $400 to go. Only the limper calls, and we go to an amazing looking flop of Jack 7 deuce with a flush draw. Top set for us. She checks, I bet small, and she calls. The turn is just overkill, giving me a full house. She checks again, and I'm going to keep betting because I have something really good. pretty advanced stuff here, huh? This time I bet $2,000, fingers crossed that she has a 7, a flush draw, maybe even the last jack in the deck, and it seems she does have one of those because she makes the call once again. Off to see one last card, which is the 4 of spades. She checks it a third time, and now it's a question of how much to bet. There's around $5,000 in the pot, and she has like $10,000 remaining. Well, if she called the turn with the flush draw, I don't expect her to fold now. Plus, if I was bluffing here, I would definitely try to apply max pressure. For all those reasons, I think an all-in makes the most sense, so that's what I decided to do.
How big will he go here? All of it. Candy's been pretty sticky tonight.
And the call.
She pays it off.
Wow. Today's not my name. All right, that's it for me.
Pretty good aw shucks there from Mariano after the hand.
Yeah, it's covered. All righty. Bye.
In the end, my opponent makes the call with ace-jack, and we take down a nice pot. Moving right along, I open jack-10 of clubs on the button and get called by just the big blind. Flop is great, ace-king-7 with 2 clubs, giving me a flush draw and a straight draw. The big blind checks, I bet small, and he calls. The turn is a brick, he checks again, and this time I bet the size of the pot. I'm expecting him to fold any 7 now, perhaps any king as well. But when he calls again, I think it's clear he's got at least an ace. So I just give up on the river, and thank God I did because we were up against 2 pair. Not a lot happening in that hand, but this next one is going to change that. There's no straddle on this time, sadly, but there is a limp from early position before I wake up with an absolute monster. 10-9. That's right, guys, I finally got it dealt to me. I raise it up to 200, and only the limper calls. Jokes aside, this is probably not a good play. I mean, I'm happy to raise in position with a lot of hands versus a limper, but I think this one is just too ambitious. Anyway, too late now. We go to a flop of jack 7-6. Not exactly the best board for me, but when he checks, I fire one more bet in hopes of folding out hands like ace high, king high, small pocket pairs, etc. However, my opponent does not fold, so I think I'm just done with it. Until we make the nuts on the turn. A miracle offsuit 8 out of nowhere, which also gives my opponent a smaller straight. So yeah, just a dream situation here. He checks, I bet again, and now he raises to $3,000. I'm in position, so I just call and find a clean, innocent-looking river card. Honestly, not a ton of analysis to be made here. You guys can probably guess how this one ends.
Gets a perfect card to get the rest of the chips.
All in.
I have the nuts, Ronnie. I call.
Really?
Nice call, Mariano.
Fucking bottom nuts. That's how we roll, Charlie. Nice hand, sir.
Thank you.
Ugh. 4-5.
So we take down another big pot, but let's be real. I didn't do much that hand aside from running ridiculously hot. In the next one, action folds around to me in the small blind, and I open with 8-7. Big blind defends, so we go heads up to a flop of 9-5-3 rainbow. I continue with a bet of $100, and then my opponent raises to $375. With only 8 high and a straight draw, I think folding makes the most sense, but I actually don't hate the idea of calling with some evil intentions later on. So I make the call, and we see a king on the turn. I check it over, but this time he checks back. River comes another 9, and now I'm sitting with just 8 high. However, I could easily have a 9 myself, or some pocket pairs that choose to go for value now, occasionally even a king. So I bet $1,000, and luckily don't get snap called.
Mariano is repping 3 9s or better. Will he get credit for it? Eric's a little bit spooked by how good Mariano runs, but this is just a tough sell here. Well, you know what I mean.
You win.
Eventually, he does end up making the correct decision, and we lose. Nice hand, man. Moving on to the next hand, there's an open from early position for $200, and I choose to re-raise with King 9 of spades in position. Everyone else folds, and it gets back to the initial raiser. He thinks it over for a while, and eventually decides $700 is not enough, and bumps it up to $1,800. Action's back to me now, and at this point I think it's fairly obvious we're up against a big hand, but considering that my opponent has plenty of money left behind, and we're in position, I choose to make an ambitious call. With nearly $4,000 already in the middle, we go to a flop of Jack 8-4 with 2 spades. Oh boy. He continues with a bet of $2,500, and I make the call. The turn is the ace of hearts, bringing in a second flush draw. My opponent seems unfazed though, because he keeps betting, this time $3,300. I don't think a raise makes much sense, so I call once again, and we're off to see one last card, which sadly brings no help, but it's actually a decent card, especially once he checks it over to me. Obviously, I have nothing with only king high, but I could certainly have some stuff on this board like King 10 of spades, 10 9 of spades, pocket jacks, pocket eights, pocket aces, you get the idea. Of course, with all those hands, I would be going all in, so I think we only have one play here.
Is it all in time for Mariano? It is. This would be a great call if Slim can make it. It's a very well played hand by Mariano. He just got caught bluffing. Slim's probably thinking, would he do it twice in a row? The answer is yes. This is the thing with these guys. Candy paid it off. Mariano had a boat. Slim's probably going to fold. And Mariano wins with king high. This is a really tough spot. I don't blame him for folding.
He has 1,000 white out of here.
Play of the night right there.
Thankfully, this one works out and we keep things going on the right track. A few minutes later, a similar situation develops where that same player opens to 200 and I make it 700 once again, only this time I have king 10 and he's got pocket fives. He makes the call and we go to a flop of Jack 8-6 rainbow. He checks, I pretend I have something, and he does not believe me. The turn is another jack, not a good card to keep bluffing on, so this time I check it back, and we get an ace on the river. He checks a third time, and I think this river card gives us the green light to bet. It seems like he probably called the flop with some sort of pair, and those types of hands would have a hard time calling a bet here. So I throw out $2,000, and now it's once again time to wait and see what happens.
This is why it's so tough. Call with those fives on the Jack 8-6. Almost anything that comes is going to suck for you. That's what you're seeing here. Mariano is in beast mode.
Luckily, we get another one through, but you know what sounds nice? Actually having something good. For example, pocket aces in the straddle. That's what's going on here, and even better news is that there's a raise from the button and a call from the big blind. I'm definitely raising myself, so I make it 1,600, and interestingly enough, the button folds, but the big blind calls again. Two of us go into a flop of King Jack 7. He checks, I bet 1,000, and he calls. The turn is a 9, which isn't the best card. Now we're losing to some 2-pair and straight possibilities, so this time I check it back. But the river looks better, another 9. This card makes it less likely that we're beat, so when he checks again, I think it's clear aces are ahead. I place a value bet of $3,000, and after some thought, he makes the call. I turn it over, and we're good. That brings us to the last noteworthy hand of the night. In this one, the small blind opens to 425, and I defend the straddle with Jack 3 suited. Could make a case for raising as well, but I choose to call this time, and we see a flop of 9-7-6 with 1 heart. My opponent throws out a continuation bet of $400, and now it's back on me. Clearly, I don't have much here, but this is a board where I would often flop something strong. In addition, we have some backdoor possibilities for a straight or a flush, so with all that in mind, I decided to start applying some pressure right now. I raise it up to 1300, and after some deliberation, he makes the call. The turn card brings some help in the form of a flush draw, so when he checks it over, I'm going to stick to the plan. This time, I bet $3,300 and cross my fingers that it gets the job done.
He does. That's about pot.
Well, he's folded for 9, 15, 20 hands. Now he finally decides to put a lot of chips. What does that mean? I could be stubborn, right? Or I could be smart.
Be stubborn, Ronnie.
Does anybody beat him all day today? I mean, I don't think, right? I haven't seen
No one
anybody
beats
else
Mariano.
beat him, right? Why would I try to do that?
If you call the river as a jack
Why
or a
would
heart.
I try? Right? I mean, it's just like, no, it's probably better to pick on somebody else, right?
Well, this hand also ends up working out, and that caps off a very fortunate night for myself. Just one of those rare sessions where everything seems to go right. As you know, that's not usually how poker goes, but when it does, I'll happily take it. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the hands. That went about as amazing as you could hope for. I was in for 50,000 and cashed out for right around $100,000 back here behind me. I don't have an exact count yet, but you guys will see it right here as per usual. Easily my biggest win ever. And even though I ran really hot, obviously, I'm happy with how I played. That's not something I can say too often, but today, yeah, I was okay with it. What a journey it's been. 2 years ago, I was vlogging 1-3 sessions, maybe the occasional 2-5. Since then, things have gone extremely well, thankfully, a lot of it due to your guys' support. And today, I won way more money than I ever thought was possible playing a silly card game. All I've got to say for that is thank you guys for watching, supporting, liking all these videos, commenting, and everything in between. It's been a really fun ride. And it's definitely not over by any means. I'm happy to continue to play these stakes as often as I can, probably even bigger someday. But for now, I'm just gonna enjoy the win, let it sink in, and of course, go celebrate at Chipotle.